The village board meeting for March 11, 2015 for the village of Midlothian. Roll call.
Trustee Gillis. Here. Trustee Tilley. Here. Trustee Kreis.
Here.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Moskal.
Here.
Trustee Schiavone. Mayor Rabeck.
Here. Please stand for the pledge, and after the pledge, please stay standing for a moment of silence for our veterans. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I ask if there's anybody with any of the municipal commissions, local organizations in attendance. If you'd like to stand and be recognized, I'd like to welcome you to the meeting.
Hillier Emergency Management.
Carl Adam Beautification Committee.
Jean Bartecki, CBC.
George Jordan, Veterans Committee, BFW 2580, American Legion 691.
Ruben Casino, American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Welcome to everybody this evening. Before we open the floor to public comment, I would like Ian Covey to please come forward so we can swear you in. We have a new officer. Welcome to the village of Midlothian. If you have anybody in your family here to pin you, you can
My
bring up.
daughter, actually.
Bring them up. I already said this, I need you. Welcome aboard. How are you? And how's your day? Welcome aboard. Michael says to do this morning.
Sure.
He's going to swear you in.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ian Covey,
Having been appointed to the position
having been appointed to the position
of probationary police officer
of probationary police officer
in the village of Midlothian
in the village of Midlothian
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
aforesaid do solemnly swear
aforesaid do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the ordinances of the village of Midlothian,
and the ordinances of the village of Midlothian,
and I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties
the
of
duties
probationary police officer
of probationary police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to public comment. If you'd like to address the board, now would be your time to address the board.
Kathy Kaveny. Someone shared with me copies of the documents that were distributed at the Finance Committee meeting last Friday, and I have some comments and questions. The first, I would like to ask, I received the village newsletter today, and I'm just curious to know why Joe McDonald is still listed as treasurer. It was my understanding from many months ago, if not a year ago, that he resigned and he's not technically an employee or the treasurer any longer.
He has not been officially removed. We have not replaced him for a treasurer. He is still assisting the village. So he's gone from the full-time position here, but he's still the acting treasurer. He's still the treasurer on all the other accounts and everything.
Well, are we going to replace him?
Yes, we are.
Are we going to get a treasurer?
Yes, we are.
And is that position going to be made public is it going to be advertised in the paper for regular employment? Or are we going to hire somebody that has some municipal accounting experience to handle this?
Yes, that's what we planned on looking at, yes.
Okay. These are the questions with regards to the documents that were passed out at Friday's meeting. One of the documents was an estimated cash flow report for March through June. And my question is, how come we haven't seen an actual profit and loss statement that would look similar to that document for December, January, and February? I believe it was at the end of the November meeting or December meeting, you had reported to everybody that the accounting was all caught up and that going forward, we were gonna start to see these profit and loss statements and that the various departments in the village were gonna start getting department reports, but we still haven't seen those, and now it's March 11th.
I believe the board was provided with a budget run, the current year-to-date budget run at that meeting as well,
Yeah,
right?
so we did have well, actually not at the meeting, but you did send us
Prior.
an electronic version of a report with data, Kathy. It does not have the departments split out yet because of an issue with payroll postings,
Oh, right.
which I think we learned a little bit about this week on
Mhm.
Friday's meeting, and I know
Mhm.
Ryan is working on getting that corrected. So I think the numbers are in the system, we just haven't received reports out of the accounting system.
Okay.
And there's still some issues with the line items where items are not, understand that correctly, Mike?
Mhm.
So you're-
Yeah,
So
from payroll to,
from payroll, which is our biggest expense,
Right,
is showing up in
right.
different lines or not the right lines.
Okay. With regards to the estimated cash flow, I noticed that there was a specific line item for other expenses, and it totaled $370,000. Now, the total expenditures was $1.1 million, so that $370,000 represents about 30% of the total. And as far as I remember from my accounting classes, you should never have an other that exceeds more than 10% of what the total is. So at some point, this report is gonna have to get adjusted so that this $370,000 is broken down, so we can see what the details of that are. Because it shouldn't be that high. With regards to the treasurer's report documents that were included in the packet, it doesn't seem that the water surcharge that we're paying with our water bills is being separated out, so we can't see what that total is in that account. And also, the $15,000 grant funds that were extended from the $60,000 grant from Napoleon Harris, those are not accounted for in a separate line item. I don't believe the village is required to open up a separate account for those funds. They can be commingled in the general fund, but on our accounting records, it does have to have a separate line item. It does need to be accounted for separately. So that needs to be addressed.
Kathy, the treasurer's report is listed based on the bank accounts,
Mm-hmm.
so what accounts the cash is actually flowing into, and so depending on how individuals' water bills are paid, when the cash is received, it could be in any one of a few accounts if they pay through Illinois ePay, or if it's a check here at the village, it could be in one of the AJ Smith accounts.
Right.
But my understanding of the accounting system is we do have all of those in the underlying reports.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have actual a profit and loss statement or list of revenue expenses out of the system on paper, those should all be detailed in separate line items.
Then the water surcharge will
Yes.
be separated out. What about the $15,000 that we got from the DCOE for the $60,000 grant?
I would
Yeah,
think
it's
that
been
would also
assigned
be,
its own,
I would think
It
that
has
was
assigned
assigned
its own what?
its own GL number,
account, so it
Okay.
would show up on
Okay,
its
so
own
that
line.
should show up on a separate line item as well then,
correct.
okay? On the treasurer report, there was like a page, it was a little chart that just had like 5 or 6 line items. The general bond fund dollars and the capital improvement bond fund dollars were listed together, and that needs to be, those need to be separated out. That's just a note. And that's it for those reports. Last item I want to bring up is, again, the past due water bills. I understand that as of March 4th, the past due water bills total $295,000. And, you know, we understand that the village keeps having a cash flow problem, and it's gonna keep having a cash flow problem if we can't get people to pay their water bill on time. So, and I understand 25% of that is over 90 days old. So, my question is, for any residents that we know who have moved out of town, have their delinquent accounts been sent to collection? Or are we just relying on the village employees to make phone calls and send letters?
I know a number of calls have been
Mm-hmm,
made. I don't have an answer specifically to people who had moved,
mm-hmm,
but I can tell you that today there were 15 accounts shut off.
mm-hmm,
There's another 6 scheduled for tomorrow.
okay,
And these are all, I believe these are all accounts that are in 4 digits and
Okay.
have been, received multiple shut-off notices, late payment notices, et cetera.
Okay.
There are another 70 scheduled for the next 3 weeks.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Pat Jordan, 15023 South Ridgeway. Prior to the meeting, I was talking to my neighbor, he's walking his dog, and he's telling me that he's in foreclosure, the bank owns his house, so he's renting it from the bank. Our houses are very similar. They're asking $90,000 for it, but the fair market value, he told me, is $60,000. What is happening to the house values around here? That's horrible. I paid $105 for the one I'm in 18 years ago. It had peaked at about $118, and it's been plummeting ever since. From what I understand now, it's in the upper 90s.
I can't give you an answer, I'm not a real estate person. so-
I understand all that, and then I get this letter last Friday from Mr. Berrios saying, yeah, we're gonna jack your property tax up another 7%. When I moved in, my property tax was $1,400 a year. Now it's $3,900 at $105,000 versus $98,000. My God, what's going on?
I can't control what the other taxing agencies do to their tax bills. We can only control what the Village of Midlothian does for our portion of it. So,
I've got 2 foreclosures across from me. Small houses, A-frame style frame. I'm told they're in the mid to upper 30s. 30-something thousand for a house.
And that's really what's holding down a lot of your property values, when, sale values, when you don't have a foreclosure. Foreclosures continue to depress the market. And, when they're doing appraisals, some appraisers will use comps that will include the foreclosures also. So that just makes a mess of things. And that's what, the village is part of the South Suburban Land Bank, and it's in its infancy, but once it gets started, I think they'll be able to work it so that a lot of investors, investment companies will buy up for foreclosures in different towns all at one fell swoop and suck up some of these foreclosures. I think that will raise your property values. And that's part of why we are a member of the South Suburban Land Bank, because we think that's going to be a benefit to the village and to the property values of our residents also. They have connections, we don't.
I
Okay,
hope
they have a
so.
lot of connections, we don't.
George Doe, 3900 Block, 47th Place. I would like to thank Public Works for the prompt response when they had a problem with the water in the house, and they came out and had to shut off the buffalo box. Had a thought to lid on and get down there and do it, and they were out there within half hour, and they got it all shut off for me. And when we were done, right back out there and turned it back out here. So I'd like to thank Joe and his Public Works people for that.
Pass it along, thank you.
As Ed Fowler came out.
And file,
Yeah.
pass it along, thank you.
thank you. Yes.
Helen on 147th Street. This is also something that I'm speaking for the record. The second time I'm going to have to address this here, as unfortunate as it is. On January 28th, 2015, I brought to the mayor and the board information, concerns surrounding the mayor's decision to participate in harassing me by sending a code enforcer to my home for an inspection based on a FOIA request for information that did not exist. There was not a citizen's complaint, and there was no legal standing. This FOIA request was sent by a wet deficit email account and from a Connie and/or Carol Price. The entire email exchange between Connie or Carol and Clerk Colstead concerned financial records, present and former employees' financial information, and requests for information concerning one resident, myself. Rather than responding to the FOIA request with the appropriate answer, which was the Village of Midlothian does not have such information, Mayor Ryback sent the code enforcer to my home on January 15th without a citizen's complaint or legal standing. On the same day, the mayor told me she had spoken with her attorney who instructed her to handle the matter this way.
I emailed wet deficit account and invited the person using the name Carol Price to meet with myself and the mayor that following week to discuss their interest in my personal life. The person using the name Carol Price declined. Obviously, Carol has demonstrated no action to solve problems, only create them. Unfortunately, the coward behind the false identity of Carol Price and wet deficit has continued to make attempts to maliciously harass and spew false information with the obvious intent to harm my reputation in the public. I had not previously made this a top priority to bring the real identity to the forefront. However, the continued and ridiculous attempts to maliciously harm me are forcing me to give this immediate attention. I will reveal the actual identity following the appropriate and legal actions required. Only a pathetic coward would hide behind a fake name and use a blocked email address to boldly attack another's reputation and character with his or her lies. This illegal and malicious attempt to harass and slander my reputation with lies will be permanently and legally attached to Carol Price's actual and legal name and permanent record. It will be a well-earned testimony of his or her real character. Carol Price / wet deficit has been very sloppy in covering his and her tracks. It really was not all that hard to find the actual identity. Carol and Carol's accomplices have grossly underestimated my intelligence. So it's unfortunate, as this is going to be another tie to a very embarrassing situation for the village of Midlothian when we are finished. It will also be another large waste of time and money that could have been concentrated on something much more valuable, such as solving the flooding or the financial crisis.
Are there any other comments from the public?
I got one concerning the treasurer position. Is that going to be like a full-time position, and when do you expect to fill it?
I think the board will discuss what we want to pursue as far as filling that position and then post it and get the requirements of what we're looking to have.
When do you expect that to come out?
Actually, I planned on working on it this month, trying to get it in place.
So sometime this month, we'll know then approximately how long it will take to do
The timeline and everything we're looking at, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ruben Messina, 14740 Keeler. I'd like to expound a little bit more, and I'm not directly involved with this thing on wet deficit, but I'm going to, in certain ways, I just want to say I think we come up from a community that is above that. And there are people, I'm sure, in this room that know who wet deficit is.
We
But
know
this
who
is
wet
really-
deficit
This
is.
is really unacceptable. It's really a shame because I thought we came from something better than this, but that's obviously not the fact. And I not only challenge the board, I've challenged every person that's sitting in here, that if you know anything, you speak out, because you would not want this to happen to any of you at all. That's why I don't belong to Facebook. I could care less about Facebook. It's a social media, it's a valuable asset, but then it can also become a travesty. And this is what it is right now. We could, that thing that, I got right now pages, I've never been on that topics, Midlothian topics. What deficit is on here so many times on other subjects besides what was talked about today. Talked about that some people on the board even is under somebody's pen. That's coming from somewhere. But it makes mention of 6 people in here. Makes mention of the mayor. It makes mention of other people sitting at the board and other people in the community. It makes mention of that. All you have to do is look at it. I'm not on Facebook, so this is very public. I was able to get on it and take a look. Now, if it's mentioned on here, how do you know how far they're gonna go? You know, we don't want this for our children, and here we are, we're over 18 years of age in here. Somebody here knows about it. Somebody does. And it's a shame that this is happening. And to anybody. I don't want it to happen to anybody on the board. I don't want it to happen to anybody here or anybody out there, because we come from a community that's far greater than this. And now we're actually in the gutter.
And it's
That's a
going to be
shame.
very embarrassing for this community. It's a shame when we bring it out, it's gonna be very embarrassing, because there are ties to all of you. And it's gonna be very embarrassing, very.
The thing is just to say, names some people at the board and other people in the community in a bad light.
Very bad.
Right. They're not glorifying you in here, and I just found this today. And like I said, don't look for me on Facebook. Never am, never will be on Facebook, but please, don't do this to each other.
Thank you, Ruben. Is there anyone else who'd like to
Real
address the
embarrassing.
board? If not, we will close the floor to public comment. Board members, I would now be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. The items on tonight's consent agenda are the approval of the board meeting minutes from February 11th, 2015, the approval of special meeting minutes from February 25th, 2015, and the bill list.
I actually have a question, and I may ask to table the minutes of February 11. I was not here, so if a board member could clarify if this actually happened, it was on page 4. There are 2 sections where it says the mayor is looking for a motion to adjourn to executive session at 8:07. We have that. Then we have a comment from Superintendent Sperry. And then we have, again, the mayor asked for a motion to adjourn into executive session. Was a motion made twice to adjourn into executive session or only once? Okay, then I think I have to make a motion, or I have to ask to have the February 11 minutes removed, have the correction made, and then we have to approve them at a subsequent meeting.
Take out that second motion to adjourn to executive session.
Probably the first, because Superintendent Sperry made a comment, and then the motion was probably made to go into executive session,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't here, so.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll put those on for later this month then. So the consent agenda would be for the special meeting minutes from February 25th and the bill list.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I guess just one question, Compass Minerals is?
So,
So we get our state salt.
Oh, that's their salt people. That's another thing.
Roll call?
Trustee LaRue?
aye.
Trustee Mascom?
Aye.
Trustee Gillis?
Aye.
Trustee Pillowy?
Aye.
Trustee Kreis?
Aye.
Trustee Shironi? Absent.
Okay. We'll go on to trustee business. Trustee Kreis?
This evening, I have from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources the re-execution of a grant agreement for the Illinois Green Infrastructure Grant. Mayor, on these pages that I have out, if you could sign them, and just so I can explain to the board and to the residents, we have the village was awarded a $20,000 match from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources for this grant. It was discovered that the grant had an error in the date, that it expired in October of 2014 versus October of 2015. I kind of went into panic mode when I found out about that, and I had asked Lisa Kottner at the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, based on the new administration in Springfield, we're going to be in jeopardy of not receiving those funds, and she said, no, this is federal money and it's a pass-through through the state. I'm happy to report the grant agreement has been approved, and now the mayor is executing it, and I will get it back to the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. So we do still have the $20,000 from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources for the Illinois Green Infrastructure Grant. That's a lot of Illinois.
Karen, is that for the parking lot?
Yes, yes, and I'm looking for more money, which I'll report under the mayor's business. Also on the agenda, the Rain Ready meeting is tomorrow evening. There's been a lot of work that has gone into this. I have the agenda. I think you have it probably to Helen and Joe. I want to thank you both for being involved. I invite everybody in this room and anybody you know to come out. Just to give you a quick overview, Harriet is going to introduce the partners, which will be the Army Corps, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and Center for Neighborhood Technology. Harriet will go into the purpose and objectives of the meeting. Then she will talk about the survey findings from the resident survey. Erin Maloney, who is an engineer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, will then go into her presentation with some incredible mapping. Then the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago will go into their presentation with potential solutions to Natalie Creek funding, and then we'll have a wrap up with other partners. So we have a pretty full agenda. I'm really excited about this. This is the kickoff for our Rain Ready Steering Committee, which we are still forming. Some of you in this room are on that steering committee, and I want to thank you. So I invite all of you to come out tomorrow night. I think it's going to be really informative. And just to think where we were 2 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, even to get to this point is huge. And I can't thank Harriet Festing at the Center for Neighborhood Technology enough for her leadership. I want to thank Helen as well. But Harriet just keeps every day the emails and the requests for information, and she stays on top of a project. She has a lot of exciting ideas that we're exploring. And so stay tuned tomorrow night so you can find out about all this great work that's been done, and it's going to be unveiled. So, you know, if you're not here tomorrow night, you're not going to hear about it. So 7 p.m. tomorrow in this room. Okay. I also have on the agenda the compensation policy that I'd like the board to approve this evening. The board, I believe everybody has copies of it. I pretty much took it from other municipalities, and it was approved by the policy committee, and then it was approved by the finance committee as well. So does anybody have any questions, any discussion? If not, I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt the compensation plan as presented.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion?
Who's the human resource manager that would do this?
Or a person employed for that purpose.
Yeah, I tried to clarify it if we didn't have it. I tried to make it very clear that it was covered.
Okay. But I mean, this isn't going to go into effect without that person, okay?
Well, I think most of the policy can go into effect.
Okay.
Okay, but again, I think we need job descriptions, and we need key people. The next thing I'm going to do is tie this to performance evaluation. I'm going to try to have that policy written within the next week or two. It's tied and it references that in here as well.
Was this reviewed by the attorney?
No, I'd like to get it approved, and then we could have the attorney approve it and then amend it if needed. But I think in light of some of the discussion that took place, that we needed to get a policy in effect immediately.
So it would be subject to legal review?
I think we can pass it, and then if we have to, we can go back and amend it. Is that fair?
Yes.
And I really took a lot of it just from other towns, so I hope there's not some clearing. And I was very careful when I wrote it, but I am not an attorney.
I have a first and a second. Roll call.
Trustee Kreis.
Aye.
Trustee LaRue.
Aye.
Trustee Gillis.
Aye.
Trustee Coley.
Aye.
Trustee Masco.
Aye.
Other item that I have, I want to report on, a couple things that, just some updates and things that happened today. Veterans Committee will be meeting Monday evening, and the focus again will be on the veteran-sponsored Independence Day Parade on June 27th. That's another a great event in the village, so if anybody's interested in participating, let me know. The participation form is on the village website, and I give you a hard copy. I was contacted by Jackie Salman, who is the vice president, bear with me as I try to pronounce this, Cabinet, Reuben and Mayberry. They are the commercial realty brokers that represent Middle Plaza. And I met with her this afternoon, and she just wanted some of my thoughts and insight on filling some of the vacancies in Middle Plaza, which is the Walgreens Plaza. So she gave me sheets of people that they're trying to attract. But what I did find very interesting that I would just like to share with the board and the residents is that they thought they could get a GFS food store in there, do some reconfiguration, but they're not going to be able to get any type of food store in there because of the non-compete clause in Walgreens lease. So they are having challenges by some of the non-competes in the current leases, but she's actively pursuing some users. Some have come right out and said, no, they're not interested in the market at this time. But I thought it was very positive that she approached the village and she's looking for our input. And I thought we had a really good dialogue, and I gave her some ideas, and I actually told her if you need a place to eat, come to Midlothian. So I thought
Can we start calling it the Charter Fitness Plaza? Since Charter Fitness is the anchor in that plaza.
that wouldn't be up to me. I guess that would be Viking Partners.
How about we just start calling it the Charter Fitness?
Whatever, okay. Do you want to make a motion? So that was my first meeting, and then I had another meeting, and this happened really quickly, and if I can find the gentleman's card. I got an email yesterday from Steve Dugan, who is the developer, and he's the one who came to me about Right Way Auto. Well, he asked me, I have somebody else who would like to get in the Dodge building again. And at least today when we went in there, it wasn't 40 below. But he brought another car dealer, used car dealer, and I'm going to ask to go into executive session on this because of the what I think needs to be discussed in executive session as to the acquisition or sale, is it sale of property, Attorney Gleason?
Price for sale.
So, okay. But just to give you an overview, he has 3 locations in Chicago, and 2 of them are a block apart. He wants to consolidate. I asked him some very specific questions. He sells, he did $14 million worth of sales last year, between 1,500 and 2,000 cars. Now, I know you said Drive Time would sell 100,000 cars a year, so if that indeed is correct, I think we have to look at that very seriously. But he said he sells between 1,500 and 2,000, which sounded like a reasonable number. He asked me some very probing questions, and I asked him questions as well. I brought up the fact that the agreement would have to include consideration for the water tower, and he understood that. I explained the tip. He seemed very serious. I told him that the village actually has an offer, and so that if he truly was interested, he would have to make an offer very, very quickly. He's interested in the old Dodge building and the old used car lot. He wants to consolidate, like I said, he wants to consolidate his operations, he wants to get out of the city. Asked about our demographics. I have provided them with all that information. They wanted additional maps. I emailed that to them after our meeting. Mr. Duggan has or Dugan, whatever his name is, has the appraisals from when Right Way looked at the property. So he was actually going to come back out with his brother this evening and look at the property on the outside again. But I would like to go into executive session about that if possible.
Karen, can I ask a clarification question?
Sure.
Would the village be retaining the property that it bought to build a new water tower?
That would have to be worked, yeah, that was the caveat that I presented to him.
So we are going to retain that, okay.
I told him that that would have to be worked into the redevelopment agreement. I told him if he makes an offer and the village accepts it, we would have to have a redevelopment agreement, and all of those things would have to be included. But in the redevelopment agreement, but I made it clear that there was a site there for the water tower.
Okay.
And the only other place, after I had a conversation with engineer Koza, The only other place that we could locate it and not incur incredible costs would be on the property to the north that the village owns on the used car lot. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, it has to be near the one that just got put in a couple of years ago.
But ideally, we would like it on the Old Dodge property where it was.
Right, we already had the survey work done. and
Right.
everything on it, so.
So stay tuned. I think what's encouraging is that all of a sudden we seem to have tremendous interest on Cicero Avenue property. And I find that encouraging. And I believe I talked enough. That is all I have.
Trustee Schiavone is due back next week, early in the week, I believe, like Tuesday, so he said he will report at the next board meeting. Trustee Gillis.
Yes, with the nice weather, I just want to remind everybody that the garden walk for the village is Saturday, June 20th. You can download applications or registration forms online through the village website. Deadline is Saturday, June 6th. So if you have any special features you'd like to share with other garden enthusiasts, this is a good way to do it. For those of you that have traveled down Cicero on March 7th, you've seen that Forest had their annual fly again. And I was informed by our EMA director, Mr. Hilliard, that he would like to thank Public Works, Superintendent Sperry with his crew for the assistance of setup, the fire department, Chief Hot Wagner and Deputy Chief Rita for the planning and proper notification of outside agencies, and Officer Gully and the police department for providing traffic protection during that time. So I believe it went off without any big incidents or problems, so a nice working relationship with all the departments to get that done. I also would like to remind everybody that next Tuesday, the 17th, obviously is St. Patrick's Day, and I'm sure a lot of people know, but there may be some that don't know. Midlothian turns 88 on that day too. So for a town that was named after a Scottish name, on St. Patrick's Day, it's pretty unusual. So just wanted to express that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee LaRue.
Yes, ma'am. Last week at committee, Trustee Kilby had brought up the fact that there appears to be a shortage of handicapped parking spots at the Metro train station. So we had the police department kind of keep an eye on it for a week, and it does appear that everyone parking there is parking legally. So the next step would be, what? Do we petition Metro to see if they can give us more
I
spots?
would have to add additional spots if that's what we wanted to do.
And is that through Metro, or is that us?
We maintain the lots, but they own the property. So yeah, we would have to get permission from them to do so.
Would we actually do we would actually put the new spots in? Or would Metro?
Probably contract it out and pay for it out of the Metro funds.
Would they have to do a study first? Probably.
I don't know.
I guess, we talked about this last week, and wasn't decided that we would have you, Joe, call Metro at least to get permission, because they do own the lot? Would that be protocol?
I could, yeah.
How are
It's the first I've heard.
referring to? Because obviously they meet ADA requirements by the number they have now. So we're just looking to add more because we do have additional patrons that
Are handicapped and don't have a spot to park in.
I could make a phone call, email, see what I can find out.
Trustee Kilby brought it up, I don't know if that's.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Does anyone actually check the ordinance or the ADA Act to confirm it has enough spots? To take that too.
First step was have the police department keep an eye on it, make sure that they were parking legally, and they were, so.
But they have specific guidelines based on parking lot size and use, of how many ADA
So is that, would that be the next step then?
I think it's worth looking at, obviously, and then,
And you'll look at that?
that's just the minimum, and if we need more, then people can add more, like you guys said, so. Just to see where it fits in right now, if it meets standard, then you just add more. But if it doesn't meet standard, then obviously you want to bring it up to code as soon as you can. So, if you like, I could take a look at that.
So you're concerned what we're putting in is up to code?
Right.
And what we have now is up to code.
That we meet the standards right now.
Right.
You'll look at that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good for a fact.
All right, next thing everyone has in front of them, the hiring ordinance. It's pretty straightforward ordinance. It spells out specifically how the village handles appointments, hiring, terminations. Pretty much takes all the guesswork out of the procedure, the process. So, and it's a solid foundation for this village policy manual that we're trying to put together. We want to put together a solid manual, so we'd like to have a solid foundation. So I'd like to make a motion that we pass this ordinance tonight.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
How's the mayor feel about this?
Like I said, I got it handed to me this evening as we got here. This is the first time seeing it tonight. I haven't even really had a chance to read it because I got it right before coming into the meeting.
I don't know, a copy.
You don't have a copy of it?
No.
Oh, there's your copy.
I think it firms up on some discrepancies that we, past practice and puts it in writing, I think is what a lot of what this is. The only concern I have is section 4. I don't know if that's something that, I don't know if I would vote for. I think it might need more discussion. I think it maybe give the mayor a chance to comment on it, since it has to do with a lot of her powers, that hiring and firing, that has to do a lot with her powers, and see what she feels about it. Section 4, I'd like to see what the village attorney thinks about. In my own opinion, I think section 4 is a thing that could cause us lawsuits for unfair termination. I can see that.
It was vetted and approved by a municipal attorney, so I'm not sure what that would be problem.
Well, I mean, my own thought would be, just off the top of my head, would be that if a person that doesn't have anything in their file that disciplinary or anything bad in their file, all of a sudden is fired because 2 trustees bring it to the board and the board terminates them. I wonder, or maybe it is even to the point of if they do performance reviews and they actually have good performance review, and they are terminated because of the action of the corporate authorities. I wonder if that puts us in a more delicate position as far as any potential lawsuits for unfair termination. That would be, I would be very concerned about that. And I'd like the opinion of the attorney before we get past that. And I'd like the response personally of the mayor before we voted on this. I think this is about the powers of the mayor, and I think we should have her feedback on her response to this. This is a pretty 2-page thing, but it really has a lot of, it really changes things in some respects, and it sort of constricts her powers as it exists now. And I wonder, I think we should take more time in just reviewing this. It almost changes, in some respects, changes the form of government we have. From, I don't know if we have a strong mayor? We have, what do we have as a government? I mean, we certainly don't have a weak mayor. Let's put that weak mayor type of government. We have that the trustees, run the government, but I don't know how this all plays out, but I think we need to look at it a little more carefully.
The village president is listed in every paragraph as being part of the process. The village president not be taken out of anything. I think to read more into it than.
Well, and then number 4, I don't know if I.
This is going to be the foundation for a policy manual. There's going to be a manual that employees will be getting, so we need to start from somewhere. And I think I firmly believe this.
Well, I spoke my piece. I can't vote for this as a piece, and I think it should be taken.
I have a motion motion now to table. Do I have a second?
We had a motion
No, I
and a
have a motion.
second.
If you make a motion to table, it takes precedence.
Motion to table takes precedence? Okay, well, I'd like to move that this be tabled.
Do we have a second? Thanks, Ann. I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
This is for the policy?
The ordinance.
The ordinance? Trustee LaRue?
Aye.
Trustee Kreis?
Aye.
Trustee Gillis? Aye. Trustee Killilee?
No?
Trustee Moskowitz? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you. Anything else, trustee LaRue?
I also got the village newsletter, Park District thing today as well. Unfortunately, the Neighborhood Watch Easter egg hunt is listed here as April 5th. That would be Easter Sunday, so we need to just let people know it is actually Saturday, April 4th at the village green at 1 o'clock. And then one other thing I did catch when I was reading through it this afternoon. It was Mike Manning as the building superintendent. We never voted on it. Is that a mistake? Or?
He's going to be appointed, but yes, it shouldn't have been listed yet as that.
Okay. And, oh, one last thing. I want to get Attorney Gleason's opinion, or hear his opinion on an individual employee being singled out to be given specific job duties and responsibilities. We got a letter this week from the office manager stating that one of our employees had been given a new set of job duties and responsibilities. It was a hard copy paper where the office manager and the village employee was supposed to sign it. So I emailed her back today. I thought, okay, great, you know, employees have duties and responsibilities. And I asked to get a copy of everyone else's that works in the front office list of duties and responsibilities, because we're working on these policies, and she informed me that there were none. Does that smell of anything to you?
Do you want to discuss a specific employer, or are you talking about?
No, just in general. If only one employee out of 7 or whatever was giving a specific list of job duties and responsibilities and asked to sign it, but no one else in those roles up there were given that, is that?
If you're just asking me now, I don't have all the facts to really give you a very precise legal opinion with respect to that. I see your point, but I mean, without the facts, I can't give you a very learned legal opinion.
What the hell are we paying for?
Okay. Just curious.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but there could be circumstances why that's the place, or why they're specifically in writing as opposed to not in writing. I'm sure that everybody who works there has specific job duties. I would assume.
And that's why I assume when I got the email this week that everyone had the duties and responsibilities in writing so they would sign it, so they know what they did.
In writing as opposed to just being what they are, I think that's really whether that's a distinction.
Well, the actual email said that there are no other employees out there that have any specific job duties. It's in the process, or it's, we're working on it, so there is.
I'll follow up and make sure we got that. We did start something a few years ago.
We do have job descriptions now, of course, there's positions that have changed, but I don't know, and I don't know if they apply to certain people, but as of a couple of years ago, we had job.
It was about 3 years ago, we did have specific job descriptions, but there's different individuals working on them, and so some of those have been shifted around, but we do have a foundation, I think, so we can, I need to find those, so we can
So maybe
dust them off.
maybe she misspoke.
Well, I don't know if you do.
She may not know that they even existed, quite honestly.
And Gary, I think as we go forward, putting this manual together, which you said you would help, again, we're gonna need those job descriptions. I think I sent you an email, Mayor, about it too, needing the job descriptions, because based on the compensation plan, it's tied to performance evaluation. And so you really can't do a performance evaluation on an employee unless you have the job description.
If we're serious about having a good, solid.
Right, and I am.
we need that.
And in my past life, I had to update every employee's job description yearly. It had to be, I had to sign off on it, and they had to sign off at once a year. So I think we need to incorporate it. So the policies have been missing, the mayor had and we're trying to move forward on this, and we're trying to do it as expeditiously as possible while we're dealing with the financial issues and the other things, so.
There are job descriptions that maybe we could just update rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, a lot of those job descriptions were very comprehensive before. I mean, they were right on the butt, but
A lot has changed.
a lot of the people aren't doing the same things. That's the big problem.
And we're talking about mainly the non-union employees,
Correct.
because the union employees,
Well,
Right,
actually,
and
we
contracts
get
and
job
policies.
descriptions for both. We get job descriptions for every employee in this village. So, I mean, if that changes, that should be reviewed on everything, but I mean, administratively, that's where a lot of the changes have happened, so I guess that's a good question.
That's all I have.
Great. Trustee Killian.
CRS is supposed to give Engineer Koza a list of, from the CRS application, a list of things that we would need him to do to complete the application. And they asked him to try to put a cost estimate on his duties and on his job that he would have to do to complete the application for us, as far as what we can't do. So, I haven't done that yet. I'll try and do it by tomorrow, and then we'll have that general figure, won't be exact figure to the board, and it's just to try to decide, what we should do. Should we go forward with it, or should we wait for the potential grant that Trustee Christ talked about? And the idea is to get this moving as fast as possible, especially since it's 12 to 18 months before the village will get a rating after the board applies for it. So we want to move on it as fast as possible. I've even tossed around the idea that we should apply for it before we actually have all the information. I don't know how long it takes to get an inspector out, but as fast as we can do it and as expeditiously as we can do it. And I know Engineer Koza has already talked about, he has a lot of the information, he would do anything we need to help us complete the application. A couple of meetings ago, we talked about that we had an issue with, especially with foreclosed homes, that we wanted to try to create an ordinance that would possibly facilitate disclosure of flooding and of flooding issues and black mold issues, and also maybe to look at, should there be a mandatory inspection, house inspection for all house sellers. And I understand that Attorney Gleason has worked on a lot of that, and I think the preliminary feedback I got was pretty positive that we could do something about it. And what stage are we in with that roughly? Are you ready to talk? At some point, are you ready to talk to the board about the possibilities and what legally we can do and what we can't do?
You have to give me the direction. Do you want to make it a mandatory inspection and then we'll set a fee, or do you want to just, I know when you originally discussed it, you were talking about just a disclosure. And the disclosure that you talked about sounded pretty similar to what state law already requires. And so I wasn't sure how much that would actually assist the people. So I didn't know if you wanted to go down the road of doing the inspection or not, requiring an inspection.
Well, the board would feel, I guess from the discussion from the public, it was that they wanted to know if a property, I think the real estate uses the word leaks, isn't that what it is? Are there any leaks in the structure, the foundation, or things like that? I mean, I think from the discussion we had from open talk, that they wanted to know if a certain house had flooded before, irrespective of if it leaks or not, if it was flooding, and possibly if it had mold issues. I don't know if that's a possibility, if we can do that, or how we would enforce that, or so on and so forth. The house inspection had good possibilities of that too, but the house inspection wouldn't disclose if the property had flooding issues before. I mean, they can fix up the building and make it look good, and you won't know if it had flooded before. So I don't know what we're meeting here, what our purpose is. Basically, I was trying to find out if we could basically give the potential buyer some sort of feedback as far as has a property flooded before, And also, if it had black mold, to try, and maybe that would, what an inspection would do. I don't know what we can do to help disclose to people that are potential buyers of properties that the property has flooded. And on the other side of the coin too, I don't know if it's fair that we mandate to sellers that they have to disclose flooding when that's pretty much beyond their control. I mean, you know, I don't know. The discussion was around the one property around Hickey's that has been sold or rented multiple times. And that was the, you know, the model we were working at was how would we prevent something like that from happening again? Where people either buy it or rent it, they find out that it floods or they find out that there's mold in it or whatever it is, and they have to leave. And then it keeps on going on the market again, it keeps on going on the market again. How do we stop that? That was my, and you know, are there other foreclosed houses that are being sold as is that we can facilitate some sort of disclosure for? And short of that, you know, should we mandate some sort of inspection to help the buyer have a property that is not moldy and it doesn't have you know, doesn't have mold problems that have not been cleaned up from a flooding problem. I think that would be number one. That are all people that have flooded, are they cleaning up their property properly to make it sellable condition and to make it a healthy condition to have people live there. So, you know, I don't know what the
Trustee Lilly, can I
possibilities
ask you a
are.
question?
Yes.
Because really the concern is for the homes that repeatedly go into foreclosure,
Yeah.
those people are losing everything. And we're trying to stop the vicious cycle of people who will eventually do what has proven itself to happen over and over and over. It's not the average guy who gets a little bit of leaking. It's the historical foreclosed flood homes. We're trying to find another way out for those people and to prevent a way in for unsuspecting people. It's only fair. Not one person in this room deserves to buy into what they don't foresee. That is just permanently financial devastation.
I've seen, doing a little research on this myself, I've seen a lot of neighboring communities that do require inspections. I actually have a list on my desk. I think what we should do is reach out to some of these neighboring towns and see the platform that they use to inspect the homes. So, I mean, so we're not reinventing the wheel here. I think there are probably many communities that do this, that put something in place to protect the seller and buyer. So maybe that's a route to go on.
If you want me to correct, I mean,
I lost track of what that was.
Jerry's right. I mean, there's probably, what is it, like 100 or 200 communities in the
Okay, you'd
state
be
that have a
surprised.
mandatory inspection.
Markham is one of them.
I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot,
Park, yeah.
and they deal with it in slightly different ways, but.
The biggest issue, what Helen says, is basically trying to prevent homes that flood constantly, and trying to prevent people from buying them without the knowledge that they flood, without the knowledge that they may lose everything because a lot of the structure is not, it has been permanently weakened, it may have mold in it, you know, it may have other problems, and it's going to happen again and again. And a lot of those homes that you're talking about are foreclosed, bank-owned homes that people have no idea that happens, and then it goes up again on foreclosure when they figure out that it's not worth it to repair it. It's not worth it to try to fight the problem. It's cheaper just to walk away from your money than you put down and just try to find something that's not in that situation.
You lose all of your furniture and you lose your down payment and you walk away. And then the next guy shows up and the same exact thing happens. It's disgusting.
Plus your credit rating.
You know, if I could make a suggestion, because I'm a big proponent of R&D and we're often duplicating, I do a lot of that with the grant writing. Maybe you can reach out to some of the communities you have and see what criteria they use.
Right.
And maybe Don, through the land bank, you could reach out to some of those communities and see if they have an ordinance and what criteria they look at, specifically when it has to do with flooding. Because keep in mind, we're gonna have to build an infrastructure here to make sure we have qualified, competent inspectors to do the inspections. So, you know, it's gonna be a process, and we're gonna have policies and,
Mr. Koza was not in set when Trustee Gillis was talking, so.
Well, again, that actually ties into CRS and floodplain administration. And in fact, Jerry said it's all about inspection and documentation on the village side, because I believe once you get to 50% of, I forget the exact term, but it's basically 50%, if you spend up to 50% of the value of the house, beyond that point, you have to bring up the house to meet floodplain requirements in flood above the base flood elevation. So, but that's all about documentation, keeping track of it. But that's tied to the actual floodplain insurance requirements. And I could pull out the 5-inch thick binder and find the exact section that talks about this. But there's provisions in place that tie the CRS and flood insurance to try, and as long as you're able to document everything and keep track of how much money is being spent to repair it every time, at a certain point, the insurance requires them to either bring the house up or get rid of it. So.
Similar to, I'm not trying to make a joke about this, but similar to like a Carfax having a house fax, so that we know what's going on with the house.
I'm not sure the inspection does that, that's the problem. You know, I mean, if the inspection fixes up the house and makes it look pristine, then how do you know what's the
When
history
you
of
would
the
perform
house?
the inspection, when you have a flood event, you'd have to go around and document which houses are impacted, and then you would send your inspectors out to look at it and decide whatever they're having to do to repair it. Because technically, they need a permit to do that, usually if it's a major repair. So it's all about building that up at the village level with the inspection and documentation and everything.
Jeff, as a start, is there any way to access the NFIP database of flood losses? 'Cause I know they maintain that by address or structure.
Yeah, I believe there is somewhere. Let me look into it. If not listed online, I can talk with the
It wouldn't help for
specialist.
properties that aren't covered by flood insurance or haven't been in the past, let's say, but it would sure be a start, at least to get something together
Right.
for the ones that we know are. I mean, I know every year I get something I have to sign that has, you know, listed losses with dates and amounts or whatever.
Right.
Thankfully, there's none on mine, but I'm sure we have properties that have that on.
I know they talked in the SSMMA meeting at CNT had a lot of that data, so maybe if we talk to CNT, maybe they know how to access it, or maybe they already have the data, they can give it to us possibly.
Jeff, will you be here tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll continue to try to look into this and firm up.
Right.
More
For
information.
further discussion.
Correct.
Okay, and that's all.
All right, thank you. Trustee Mosco.
Yes, Mayor, just a few things. We did have a finance committee meeting this past Friday, and I think it was a fruitful meeting, I would say. We met for about 2 hours. We discussed the treasurer's report through January, the cash projection update, which Ryan had completed through February, which was very good and timely to have. We also discussed the status of financial reports, some of which we talked about a little earlier, and I think it was good for the finance committee to hear about some of the challenges with the, particularly with the issues with Paylocity. So we also talked about the compensation policy that Trustee Christ raised tonight, and then also a little bit about the budget process. And I think we had a good sort of interactive discussion with Brian about how we can help and some tools and reports we've had from the past. And I think we all went away with a few to do. So it was a good meeting. Our next meeting, we are planning to meet the first week of April, first or second week of April. We haven't selected a date yet, but I'll update the board. As far as the cash projection is concerned, we had some pluses and minuses and some good discussion about making some maybe reformatting changes to the report, particularly around what is restricted and what isn't. And Ryan agreed to do all those, which is good. At least looking out through June, we're still in the black, which is good. Without seeing the next few months, I think, and just knowing when property taxes will come in and other bills, I think we'll need to be nervous, you know, probably in July and August, but we'll know more as we get closer. Two other things I wanted to bring up, and I shared this last week at the committee meeting, but as the board is aware, we entered into an agreement with a new payment processing company a few months ago. And previous to that, Nicole and Maureen had done a lot of work in talking about what we had and what we were doing with Civic Plus. And Nicole contacted some new vendors, and Trustee Christ was even involved in negotiating for some better rates with them. And we've closed part of January, but actually all of February with the rates. And just looking at the month of February, we've gone from paying bank processing fees in the neighborhood of $2,500 to paying just a little over $250, and that's just 1 month. So I think that's a huge savings, and so I do appreciate Nicole's efforts and getting everything put into place. So that's something we'll continue to recognize those savings. And then lastly, it was not on the agenda for the Finance Committee meeting, but I did share with the Finance Committee the latest water report that we had. And I did not bring copies for everyone tonight, I apologize. But discussion ensued around past due water bills, and we did have, at least as of March 4th, past due bills in the amount of $295,000, which is the largest amount, at least on the report I have, that we've had since August of 2013. So that has become and will continue to be a priority in the front office. As I mentioned earlier today, there were 15 shutoffs today. I think Joe was probably painfully aware of this, as well as taking up some time from his crew. There are 6 more scheduled to be done tomorrow, and I know some people already came in today to pay them. And I received a call from one resident about setting up a plan to settle their balance. There are almost another 70, I think, scheduled to happen in the next 2.5 weeks. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully we will get some bills settled. The ones that occurred today, just for everyone's benefit, were the largest and the oldest. So those accounts, the 15 today, I think were accounts where the individuals had not made a payment in at least a year. And the largest bill was just over $4,300. So there's some significant dollars. Hopefully we will be able to close these out and bring that number back down to a reasonable level.
Neil, I would just ask every month, I think, as one of the finance committee meets, we need to have an update, the board or the
Yeah.
finance committee on the water receivable.
I'm actually going to put in, I have actually asked today if we can make the shut-off report a regular thing. And we'll put the water report on a scheduled basis. It's confusing to look at depending on when, because we have water bills that go out every month for businesses and every 3rd month for residences. And so depending on when you look at it, just the total amount due is not really helpful, because it could go from $300,000 total outstanding to $800,000 in a day. And so, you know, I want to put on a schedule so that that makes a little bit more sense and that it's easier for people to read. And the other message, at least the individual I spoke with today, who called because she was upset her water was shut off, was that we pay for the water when we are billed by Midmark. And in many cases, our residents use the water and it goes, you know, through their homes, and they use it, they shower with it, they wash their clothes with it, they drink it, and we don't bill it for 1 to 3 months after that. And when we have situations where we don't get paid for 6 to 12 months, we're just collecting money now for some water in some cases we paid for in early 2013 or 2012. So we really need to get up to speed. So hopefully this is a good first step, and we will stay on top of this as we go forward.
Was it just residents who were shut off today, or were there any businesses?
Today were all residences, Jerry.
Can I ask a question? Sure. That bill specifically for the 4,000, I know the people that are living there don't own that home anymore. That home was bought at auction. You know, I read, it was special interest in this case, but
Okay.
the house was bought, and I know in the auction it says that the buyer is, they have these people thrown out. Now, if they owe us this kind of money, and they don't own the home, what's the procedure with that? You know what I mean?
That's a good question.
Well,
Is that
it
squatted
should be
rights?
addressed. I guess my question would be, if there's any transfer, they have to come in and get a transfer
Yeah.
stamp. So that should not have occurred. Okay, they've got to come in, their representative has to come in, probably their attorney, correct, Attorney Gleason or somebody? Somebody has to come in,
Talking about who bought it.
The auction company
would
itself.
have to come in
The auction
here
company, right? Is that-
Yes.
and get a transfer stamp before they can close. So
In
there's
order
a,
to do that, they have to settle the water bill.
they have to settle the water bill. So something went wrong here, and we need to figure out what went wrong. Because that should never happen. That auction company then should have been responsible for paying that entire
The
bill
title,
before they could close.
the attorney kicked it from us, but I think the title will not be recorded, correct?
It should.
Without that stamp on it.
Usually they want to give you the title. and then-
Well, maybe they haven't closed yet. I know it was right at the beginning of January that the house went up for auction and it was bid on and somebody was awarded the bid.
If anyone knows who bought it, we might want to warn them.
I also don't know how the auction company got title to the property, because there's different ways, so that may impact what their thoughts are about why they're doing it.
But I didn't realize that about this property, but I do know there's some, I understand where they are foreclosures, and in those cases where we close them, where we shut off the water and we closed out the bills, we have sent those bills, or are in the process of sending those bills to the mortgage companies, which I
And
understand.
then in turn, we
usually
can evict these people because it's not livable without water, right?
I guess that's.
I think that's in our ordinance. That's another point I was gonna bring up. The house needs to get stickered. If their water is shut off, I believe that is clearly identified in our ordinance. The house has to be stickered. So, did that occur as well today?
You can condemn a house for no water, but you can't condemn a house for no heat.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that these were sent to the building department, but I will make sure they go to the mortgage.
Okay.
I know a few of these I think came in already and paid the bill today, so.
I have a question.
Yes,
On these water bills, where the garbage is on that, do we pay these garbage bills that are on these bills?
yes, ma'am.
So they owe us for their garbage
The
pickup
whole
for all
utility
this
bill.
time?
Yes, it's water, it's sewer, it's the admin fee, it's the water infrastructure fee, everything.
We pay approximately $70,000 each payment to the garbage company.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? Is our ordinance written such that if somebody is behind on their water bill and they do come in to satisfy it, is the ordinance set up so that payment is first applied to the $35 water surcharge and any fees and interest owed to the village and then to the bill?
No, it's not the system.
Can we legally do it that way?
I don't know, that the system isn't, the way it happens, all that allocation of the funds happens when the bill is actually generated. And those revenues and expenses revenues in the case of when a bill goes out are posted to the right account. So when a bill is generated, there's X dollars for water, X dollars for sewer,
Right.
the admin fee, the infrastructure fee, those all go to their respective accounts in the financial system. And then it becomes a receivable. So
Right.
if someone comes and pays just a portion of their bill, there's no allocation of how it splits between those amounts. It's really just, it's reducing the amount they owe us in total.
Is there a way that we can set it up so that it can get allocated to the water surcharge first?
I'm not aware of any way to do it, at least not with our current accounting system. That would be unusual in a receivables situation at least for utility billing that I'm aware of. I know some accounting software packages and maybe some legal billing packages may do that, where you can just pay certain portions of an invoice, but I don't know that it really retains what's paid and what's not, other than just the total amount. That's all I have.
That's all you have? Move on to department heads. Chief Otwager?
And nothing.
Deputy Chief Leaning? Mr. Sperry?
Yeah, just real quick, just about finished filling out the 2015 application for the CDBG grant. And I'd just like to thank Engineer Jeff Koza for all his help. He's been a wealth of knowledge for me to rely on. It's the first time I've done something like this, but that's been there with me the whole way. And hopefully we'll have it wrapped up by the end of this week. That's all.
If I could just piggyback on that for a minute. With this grant, I just want the residents to be aware that the resurfacing would be approximately 8,000 linear feet of street resurfacing and repairing curbs, and I believe Superintendent Sperry will make recommendation of which roads would get resurfaced based on the condition they are present.
It's all restricted to certain areas that are low income. It's all that,
It's all based on census tracts.
Yeah, this is not like the worst streets. There are other streets that are worse that has to be done separately. This can only be in a certain specific area that qualifies.
So you see some streets that hopefully we get this grant, and wouldn't be till next year anyway. But I just want people to know that it's restricted to certain areas.
Okay, thanks, Drew. I'm sorry, I missed you, I went right over you. Do you have anything for us?
Yeah, I do. I have a few things. I just want to everyone know that I met with the mayor, trustee Price, superintendent Sperry, to work on the village's response to CNAP's request to update our bicycle plan. The key thing being to make sure that all the paths that they show are proposed, that we actually want them to be there. Another key thing is to identify critical gaps in our sidewalk system. So I know trustee Price and Joe are working hard on that to get that response in by March 20th. And it'll only go to help future funding requests to show that we were up to date with our plans and have the most accurate information when the agencies go to review our applications for funding. Joe spoke about the CDBG project. That's up to $400,000 of potential funding to help with street resurfacing. And luckily, probably later this year, there will be over $70 million worth of Cook County funding for CDBG disaster recovery that should be available to assist with flooding concerns. So typically CDBG, regular CDBG-like projects that you can get completed quickly, spend the money so the county looks good. And street resurfacing is a great way to do that. It's been done several times in the past with those projects. So working with Joe to put together a strong application so we can get that funding. Also met with Superintendent Sperry and the mayor to discuss the scheduling for the 144th Street and 149th Street resurfacing projects. As you recall, last October or September, the village was awarded over $660,000 in federal funds to resurface those two segments between Cicero and Pulaski. The grants have become, the construction dollars become available federal fiscal year 2016, which begins in October. So we're looking at construction in the spring of 2017. I'm sorry, 2016, next summer for those projects. So we'll make sure that we have those on track so we can get those out to bid, and hopefully we can pair that with the CDBG project and do a lot of work next summer.
Jeff, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
That's a surface transportation?
Correct.
Okay, there's a 20% match, correct?
Correct. That was a special case for federal fiscal year.
Other than
15.
having, typically it's 30%.
Typically it's 30%.
Right, we need to make sure that we have that money.
Absolutely.
Okay,
We'll
I mean,
do
that's
that.
really critical, finance committee, we're gonna have to come up with 20% on this, okay?
Typically lower fuel tax is an excellent source for that, if that's available. So,
Just want everybody to be aware of that.
Also, MWRD had a infiltration seminar Tuesday, and Robinson attended. Inflow and infiltration is when your groundwater or stormwater leaches into the sanitary sewer system through leaking joints in pipes or cracks in pipes, or cracks in manhole structures. And what that can cause, if you get a lot of it in older areas, it can cause basement backups due to just sewer being backed up, not flooding the way. So MWRE last August passed amendments to their watershed management ordinance, which requires short-term plans and long-term plans to address the situation because they're under a mandate by the EPA here in I&I in their system, and most of their system happens to consist of local sewers, whereas they only have home and interceptor sewers. So long story short, they're going to require a lot of funding and a lot of budgeting for infrastructure improvements to our sanitary sewer through sewer lining or even sewer replacement. And they've asked for short-term plans, which essentially you identify the worst areas and try and figure out a way to take care of those first. And long-term plans, you're looking down the road and kind of a 10, 20, 30-year plan to address the situation. They haven't given any hard deadlines on how much money you have to spend or anything like that. At the meeting, they appear to be somewhat lenient, understanding that many communities are in difficult financial straits right now. So there'll be more information on that as it comes out this year, but it's something that we have to keep in the back of our mind as we put together infrastructure improvement plans. Finally, talked about this in the past, but last May, MWRE approved their new watershed management ordinance, and it had a lot of changes as it relates to stormwater management. that's where the village ones, I think it's important for the village to adopt that, that registration, combining with the existing regulations and make sure we have a coherent set of guidelines for developers to be able to address. Because right now you have village requirements, some are more stringent, some are less stringent, and then you have FWRD, which supersedes that anyway. So it kind of ties in actually to tomorrow's meeting. There's probably many strategies that we can discuss to perhaps blend that. If something in MWRD is not stringent enough for our situation, then we can require more requirements for certain stormwater management. So I think it's important to adopt that formally and clean up our ordinance now that MWRD has stepped in and issued authority on this, so that when developers come in and look to try and develop, they have a clear picture of what they need to do, and make sure the residents are protected if they're providing adequate stormwater management. And also, I will be attending the meeting tomorrow night, looking forward to the discussion, and be welcome to serve on the steering committee if you have spots available.
How long do we have spots available? It's just gonna be probably on another Thursday.
Can I ask you one question? Are you familiar with the development on the south end of the Oak Forest retention reservoir?
No.
Did you get the email? Because nobody has responded.
I
Nobody.
just met with guys from MWRD and Army Corps yesterday or the day before, and I brought that up. I said, is anybody going to give Helen an answer? And they said because it was existing property, there was already stuff on there that they tore down. And it shouldn't, this is what they told me.
You and I have been going to a carnival there for how long? There was
I'm just
nothing.
a messenger. All they said was that it was already, existing buildings there was already in the watershed, so that it shouldn't change the effects on the watershed.
They're bobcatting ground that has nothing on it.
They'll be here tomorrow.
There's dialysis center, and there's a bobcat in holes. They're not digging up nothing. They're just selling and redeveloping.
I'm just telling you what they told me, I'm just trying to.
They forget we have photos, right, Joe? They forget.
Can I make a comment with regards to Joe's comment, or I'm sorry, Jeff's comment regarding sidewalks? I had made, I contacted Joe right after the Super Bowl blizzard we had, because every morning I go down 145th Street eastbound and I cross over Pulaski, and when you go through the intersection on the east side of the street, as you're going down 145th, the right way car dealers on the left, the apartment buildings on the right, and from the hard corners on both sides going east, there's no sidewalks. And there was so much snow piled up that the school kids had to walk in the street to get to the corner and actually stand damn near in the intersection to cross the road to get to school. So
That's kind of what we're trying to address, a lot of
right,
that.
so if you guys could keep that in mind when you're discussing sidewalks, and at least for half a block, put sidewalks in so they can get off the road, off the street and onto a sidewalk to cross.
I know a couple of the streets on the CDBG list had maybe a property or two where a sidewalk gap was missing, and we're gonna make sure we put money in our application to take care of that, fill those gaps in. But that plan will go a long way in identifying those, which will help the village when they pursue grant funds, because they'll know exactly where they are, so. And that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, under my business, I'd be looking for the approval of the 2015 ComEd Green Region Program resolution. There is a completed resolution that we'll be signing. You guys just got the meat of it.
If I could explain this, I've been writing another grant.
Yeah.
This is due on the 15th, and it's ComEd, it's open lands, ComEd Green Region. The maximum that we can apply for is 10,000, so I'm applying for 10,000. We would have to have a $5,000 match, but we really qualify because we have $68,000 from the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, and we have $20,000 from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and we have a commitment from the VFW to expand that project. So we've got the match covered. I think based on, I've made a compelling argument based on everything that we have with the Illinois Green Infrastructure Grant. So it's a lot of work to get $5,000, but really it's really important to continue these projects, because that again is going to stop water from going into Midlothian Creek, and it's going to clean up a blighted area. This is gonna go to the Illinois Green Infrastructure Grant. So, we need a board resolution saying that we will, that the match is there and that the board supports it. So that's what this is all about.
So I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Price.
Aye.
Trustee Gillis.
Aye.
Trustee Killily.
Aye.
Trustee LaRue.
Aye.
Trustee Mansell. Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, the next thing I'm looking for approval is the RDA with Rexford Automotive. As per the board's directive, I had Attorney Gleason and myself, we drafted a RDA for Rexford Automotive down on 147th Street. We mirrored Cars 147 like you requested, and then I sent it to the trustees for any other input. Trustee Price, I did hear back from you, and you had a couple of changes and additions, and those were addressed and changed in the new RDA. So I'd be looking for approval of this RDA so they can finish up their work and get open at Rexford's.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Can I just ask the mayor if the Cars 147 has a minimum of 2,500, is that the same wording?
Yes,
Yeah, it is.
yes, the wording is, yeah, the minimums, yes.
I think the board said that the Cars 147, we probably set that a little low, because if you think about it, they can all, if they have one $20,000 car on the lot and two $2,500 cars, that almost meets the requirements. They could almost have twice as many cheap cars as they can have, cars that we would want to be in some sort of price range we would like to be sold in some respects.
I know we give them
gives them the
median.
option.
Yeah, there's also a median price.
There's a median
I
price.
know, it's like 9,000, but if you look at that, if you took, according to my rotten reference, 25,000 divided by 3, just about, we'd say median. So, I mean, it gives them the opportunity, if they have a few higher priced vehicles, to put twice as many lower priced vehicles on the lot. So I think that gives them a little more opening than probably we wanted to give them, but I don't know if it's fair. I'd like to say, gee, we should raise the median tonight, but I don't know if that's fair to them, does it make them less competitive? I don't know. It just makes me gun shy that, we gave them an opportunity to have more lower priced vehicles than maybe we had in mind originally when we did the RDAs.
So what would you suggest we raise it
Well,
to?
I don't know if it's fair, but my own thought would be is that 3,500. I don't know if we can get $2,500 cars nowadays. I talked to a lot of used car dealers that can't find them. If they are, they're wrecks. But I mean, the bottom line is, even $3,500 cars are hard to get. I know a couple of used car dealers that have been in the business for a long time, and they just can't find them. So I'd like to limit the amount of low price cars we got, especially in that area. I think that area is a little nicer area. I don't know what the board thinks. It just makes me a little gun shy that we're doing that.
So you're okay with the used car dealer, but it has to be a really expensive used car dealer,
Well,
so no one will buy cars.
The 35, I think overall, we want to limit the really low-end cars. Or we'd like to limit the low-end cars.
We did.
Not as much as we thought.
If you go by the dealer, the cars he has out there now, there are no $3,500 cars.
Okay.
I would recommend that we stay with this to stay fair and
Competitive.
competitive.
Right, I understand.
But then take into consideration next time we do an RDA, if we have another used car lot, which might happen.
Yeah, we increase it,
that we
especially if
increase
it's on
it.
Cicero Avenue.
Yeah.
I just had one other comment too, and I think we need to, I looked at this the second time, but I think we need to keep a close watch on particularly for this one, the stipulation that vehicles not be parked on sidewalks or within 15 feet of 147.
Absolutely.
I didn't go out with the measuring tape, but I think they're a little closer than 15 feet.
And blocking the fire hydrant through,
Yeah.
that was an issue really.
Is there actually access? We're sure there's access with emergency vehicles to get to that building?
I went over and talked to them, we've had issues with them too, also parking cars right at the top of the building. Told we wanted at least 10 feet around the building,
and we need 15 feet off the sidewalk.